Hello, I'm Shelley Rothus, and I'm a different kind of victim. Today we are going to continue with part 6 finally, and that will be on conditioned, normalized victimization syndrome. In the last part, we discussed the honeymoon stage and why that is not giving the correct information, and it's misinforming many people based upon domestic violence. As I've proven, even with my 2 personal stories that I've been going over, it's not related to just intimate partnership that most people automatically assume. So I'm going to continue with part 6 with conditioned, normalized victimization syndrome. One of Ken's excuses for being involved in that abuse against me was that he felt that he would be labeled as an unloyal and untrustworthy friend if he admitted to me what not only the others were doing, but he was also doing to me. This is an example I gave as the common excuse in that bullying cult clan. But they are my friends, and I don't want to betray them by sharing any secrets with others outside that group of friends. Note that the excuse those people use frequently is to delusionally disregard the fact that they are engaging in abusive behaviors that do harm to others that don't deserve that happening to them. Ken's exception for being involved in that abuse against me was that he was talking to them more frequently and had known them a long time. This was obvious because Ken didn't abandon me until the cult leader was aware that Ken was talking to me, the victim of that abuse. Also due to the fear of becoming the victim if he remained friends with me and they found out. I myself accepted Ken's response of not speaking to me or responding to me more frequently and more often after the last bullying incident, which actually started right after Madame de Citrus had falsely accused me of saying that Ken made the decision to remove her from my truth group. Ken had also started to give me very short responses the very few times that he did respond to me in private message. Ken also used excuses that were actually lies as for why he didn't respond to me for a long time. Many would say that Ken was probably busy, but I knew that he was lying because he almost always had time to make comments or respond to others on Facebook during the time he told me that he was busy. Actually, a few of the clan members have also told me that same lame excuse for Ken. They have told me that Ken hasn't been on much because he has been busy with work and his mother. He had told me that he hasn't been active on Facebook because he is dealing with his own family drama or problems. Yet he had plenty of time to go out of his way to degrade me in despicable, cruel ways in the recent hate group that was intentionally made to harm me. He also had time to go into my personal group that was special to me and write a very long message to humiliate me in very cruel and despicable ways. Yeah, he's really busy, you know. He has his own problems, but he had plenty of time to be despicable and cruel to me, right? And be in a hate group. Yeah, but he's so busy, right? But he said he has his own personal problems he is dealing with, as though he is too stressed out by that and doesn't have it in him to take anymore. You know, because like he told the other assholes, I'm nothing but an annoying, uninteresting mental case that he hates talking to. Yes, I noticed this, and I'm glad that I did because I would rather be told the truth than to be lied to. I'd rather him say it to my face instead of being a coward and talking about me behind my back. I noticed this, and I'm glad I did, because I'd rather be told the truth than be lied to. And that's very true. I'd rather them just told me straight to my face instead of being a coward. I may be naive about certain things, but I am not stupid. I also let Ken know that I knew this in my private messages and letters that I wrote to him. But he never had the personal integrity or common decency to tell me how he actually felt. Ken degrading me in the recent hate group by telling others that were lying and degrading me in cruel and despicable ways, that he rarely had any good conversations with me, implying that I am mental and annoying to him. That's not any different than my abusers treating me like I am nothing but a burden and an annoying job to have in their life. Many refer to a person who does that as a two-faced person who is insincere and shouldn't be trusted. My male friends refer to a man who does that as a coward. I have a few choice words for an asshole who would stoop so low and say despicable and cruel things about someone who had trusted and respected them, but I will behave. Especially since I had done nothing to intentionally harm Ken. I do agree that Ken is an insincere coward that doesn't have any common decency to treat others with respect. Now I will explain how this negatively affects the victim of that abuse. I myself gave Ken the same exact excuse and exception as for why he betrayed and deceived me while pretending to be a friend who respected me. I had actually written to Ken telling him that I understand why he sided with the others over me. I myself excused his ill behaviors towards me because he was their friend, and he had also spoken to them more frequently than he had with me. This also proves that it doesn't matter how long you've known a person as for being able to know if that person is in fact a trustworthy person that you can count on to be equally respectful within the relationship you have with that person. Most people automatically assume that a person who was betrayed or deceived by another person was foolish for trusting them too quickly. Meaning most people assume that person only knew the person who betrayed or deceived them for a very short time. In my case, I proved that to be untrue because it was John Paul who ended up informing me about the abuse instead of Ken, who I had known longer and had spoken to more frequently. That assumption or myth negatively affects all victims as a whole. I myself now fully understand how that myth that promotes rape culture is also one that promotes domestic violence culture. This common myth is that most rapes occur with strangers or someone that victim didn't know for a good amount of time, that most believe will determine whether or not someone is a good, humane, trustworthy person. I myself knew that people would automatically assume that I only knew Ken for a short time. I also knew that most would also judge me by automatically thinking that I am a foolish person for trusting someone I didn't know long enough to trust them the way I did. Actually, I was absolutely correct because every single person did automatically assume that when they were aware of my story based upon what happened between me and Ken during the time the last bullying incident happened. I cannot tell you how many times I was told things such as, you need to be careful with who you trust. You should be more wise about who you choose to be friends with. You should stay away from negative people who harm you. You shouldn't have remained friends with that person or people who deceived or betrayed you. You can't trust everyone. Note the you within each one of those statements. Another friend had also made the assumption that I was currently a clan member of that bullying cult clan in the recent bullying incident, when the fact is that I had not associated with that clan for a long time. This friend told me this right after Ken had attacked me and humiliated me in the private message group that was special to me. This is also a part of domestic violence culture, because that person blamed me for why Ken chose to attack and abuse me in front of others, including that person. Instead of owning up to the fact that they were a part of why that abuse was encouraged and enabled, that person blamed me for it happening by falsely accusing me of being a reason as for why it happened in the first place. When the fact is that even if I was still associated with that clan, it is never the victim's fault for any abuse that happens to them. Yes, indeed. That is the same exact way how rape culture teaches others in society to automatically blame the victim for the abuse that happened to them. That right there is no different than telling a rape victim that they should have been more wise and careful when they were at a place or surrounded by other people during the time that victim ended up getting raped. That's one huge factor for the fear part that plays a huge role as for why victims often remain in toxic abusive relationships and begin to normalize those toxic abusive relationships as being healthy relationships. The victim eventually will be conditioned to believing that with other toxic abusive relationships that they end up having with others they choose to have a relationship with. That fear is based upon domestic violence culture that ends up making that victim believe the abuse that happened to them was in fact their fault. And that's very true. You know, they automatically said, well, maybe you shouldn't, hang out with that crowd anymore, that bullying cult clan. I hadn't, associated with that cult clan for over 6 months. And just like my friend Nina explained to me, cult clans, the way they work is even if you had left and tried to escape, they'll come right after you, because you are now a threat to their cult clan. Because what if you speak and let everybody know about it, just like I did about those two bullying cult clans? People know about it now. They have seen the truth. More people have seen the truth. And hey, the truth wins, at least. The very few times that it does, very shockingly. But anyways, the point is that many people will have these, judgments and even blame the victim. They even stated, that, Santa Viking, should leave that crowd. Again, I can't control what other people do. And even if I was still associated with them, it's not my fault if they attacked me and I had done nothing to deserve it. I'm still the victim. That's how it should be seen. Because if anything, that's blaming the victim and judging them. And like I've been going over based upon, the fear, is that, the victim's already feeling these things about themselves. And then others saying it too. You're putting two and, both of those together. That's part of the conditioned, normalized victimization syndrome as to what can make it worse and keep continuing. So instead of judging and blaming, maybe people should think about things before they say them, or even thinking that and believing these myths and understanding what the victim is going through in order for things to change and get better, and to hopefully lessen that fear. to help lessen abuse and how often it continues and how often victims go back or even stay in abusive relationships. That's only one factor based upon abuse and why it continues and it gets worse. So as for that, I'm going to end it for right now, and I'll be continuing this again, and this will be part 6 continued, and that's based upon conditioned, normalized victimization syndrome. So hope to see you for part 6 continued again with this part of it, of the topic. I'm Shelley Rothus, and I'm a different kind of victim. See you next time.